I thought that this tech art brief would be a good opportunity to utilize an idea that I've not really known what to do with for a long time. I thought this would make for a nice character, quite lighthearted, to feature in like a promotional ad for maybe a gym or like an exercise program or something like that, something along those lines. In researching 2D character rigs, I sort of came to the conclusion that the industry standard would be a program called Spline, which lets you import your 2D design and adds this sort of skeletal structure to it, which you can add little weights to help control the influences on the different part of the character. Unfortunately, though, the brief for this module specified a 3D rig, which for me means going back to Maya. So I came across these two interesting rigs made by one by David Hall and one by Jamie Camarillo. The first is called the Hero rig, which makes use of like the skeleton tools within Maya, working in a similar way to a 3D character with joints and skin weights and all that stuff. This method of 2D character rigging gives the character a bit of leeway when it moves, so the limbs sort of stretch due to the painted skin weights. What's quite cool about this rig is the way the maker of it has included automation. So the character has this little sort of machine gun thing that you can set attributes for. You can set attributes for how much it recoils, how much it jiggles when it fires, and also the severity of how many bullets it fires at once, how wide the spray is. It's quite cool. And the other rig is a custom rig based on the Satan character from South Park. What I like about this rig is both its customizability and its functionality. There's so many variations for the different body parts, and also the control shapes. They're laid out really nicely. They're quite distinctive. This rig is built up quite differently in that all the assets are brought into Maya initially, and then they're controlled by arranging them in the outliner into a hierarchy. For my rig, I decided to use this method because I'm not really a big fan of skeletal rigging or weight mapping in Maya at all. What this basically means is everything in the rig links back to the one global controller, and that's also where I can flick between the front and side views. Before I go too in depth though, I'll show you a short animation that I created using this rig. What I like most about the rig is, much like the South Park rig, is the amount of options I was able to add. You can switch between different legs, different arms, different expressions. I prefer the design with the sunglasses on, but I'm quite glad that I added the different eye shapes because they do add an extra level of expressiveness, which it's quite good. I think one thing I should have put in would be like an extra mouth shape that would be sort of an O shape, sort of as he's exhaling. One thing I kept struggling with was the menus. I found it really difficult to select and drag the little circles without selecting the whole menu, but my lecture showed me how to select all the menus and put them into this little reference folder, which meant that you couldn't select them at all, but they were still parented to the rest of the rig, which that pretty much solved the problem there. I still think the circles are a bit small to select, but I can still live with that. Perhaps the biggest downside to the hierarchy method is that there are no IK controls. With the skeleton method, you could sort of make an IK-FK switch, but I think trying to do that with this hierarchy method would sort of overcomplicate the whole rig. It might be possible, but I wouldn't want to go there. This problem is mostly apparent in the legs. They have a tendency to sort of arc down, which is kind of noticeable on a flat surface, but about 80% of that arc can be sorted out in the graph editor. The connectors are also quite a handy feature too. In some of the more extreme poses, you notice that the limbs of the cookie can kind of break apart a wee bit, and they have little gaps in them, so what you can do is turn on these connectors to slot in so that the sort of maintains its shape a lot better. Moving on to the side view, you can see that there are significantly less menu options because I think the expression isn't all too readable in the side view as opposed to the front. One thing that annoys me slightly is the side view. To me, it looks a bit taller than the front view. Sort of when it switches over between the two, it looks a bit off. but that could just be me. The limbs in the side view were also quite tricky because they were also closely packed together in the one place, and selecting them became quite finicky quite early on. So I came up with the idea of these little versions off to the side that are all orient constrained to the originals. It helps the animator to see where everything is and their positions, and it's a lot less fiddly. I think it's safe to say that the rig itself is absolutely fit for purpose in terms of capabilities and functionality, and that's not even talking about the way it looks or the challenges that I had along the way, which have helped me a lot. So, well, that's all from me. Thank you for watching.